Building a family can be a complicated, messy, lonely, and sometimes heartbreaking process. But you don't have to navigate this challenging journey alone.
Welcome to the All Paths podcast, where we support and celebrate all of the different ways there are to grow a family. We are your hosts, Kate and Emily from the nonprofit organization All Paths Family Building. And today we're talking with Courtney about her journey. Courtney, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So before we get into your story in more detail, we'd love for you to introduce yourself for our listeners.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Courtney. I am a current PhD student at the Fletcher School of Tufts, where I look at intersections of conflict, reproductive health, and humanitarian programming. So I say that because I think it comes into a lot of what we'll be talking about today. And on a personal level, I'm also somebody that has endometriosis and has recently been getting into more advocacy around that. Besides that, I married, have a dog. That's our family at the moment.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I have to ask because I know, if anybody listening has dipped their toe into the endo world, it typically takes 8 to 10 years to getting a diagnosis. I know it took me probably around that amount of time. When did you get your diagnosis?
Yeah, my diagnosis came at 23. So I also want to acknowledge that while I struggled for a long time, it took me about 3 or 4 years, I think, from the onset of symptoms to actually get a diagnosis. And in some ways, I was really, really lucky because when I graduated college and I started at my first job, I made one of my very best friends who also had endometriosis. And she saw me for a while, like sneak off and leave work early, or be in a lot of pain, or missing a lot of days at work, or struggling to go walk to get a coffee together. And so she had been treated, had endometriosis and adenomyosis. And she said, Courtney, you know what? I really think you have endo. And I had previous medical conditions. I've had DVT and a pulmonary embolism that I was treated at 17 with at Boston Children's, and they saved my life, quite honestly, because I learned that I have factor 2 and factor 5 clotting disorders. So that also kind of complicated it. And what that left me was a lot of medical trauma. So while she told me, Courtney, I think you have endo, I was like, yeah, I don't know about that. It's just what it is, it's just painful. I can do it. I'm just being dramatic. And she pushed me for a long time. She would check in with me, say, Courtney, have you called the endo office there? And I was like, do it later. And what I was really doing was I was avoiding what I knew was, inevitable, that I was going to have to face a diagnosis I didn't really want to have to face, and deal with a thing that I didn't really want to deal with after having kind of a really traumatic and scary experience at 17 already. So I was 23 and not wanting to go through that again. But eventually I did. And that was the best decision I ever made. I got connected with Mount Auburn Center for Endometriosis Care, which changed my life. And I'm so grateful for my friend to push me. And she was such a guide to me along this way, that it's such an isolating experience, but I essentially had somebody who had gone through it and I could ask those questions. And she was with me before and after all my surgeries. And when I had a complication, one of them, and was in the hospital, she was there. So my long winding way of to say this is that a lot of my issues were bad, but could have been worse if it had not been for this friend. So, Kate, if you are listening, which I know you will be, thank you. And I love you very much.
So sweet. And I think so much of what you said, I feel like resonates in that. One, it's understandable that you didn't want another thing when you'd already been through a traumatic medical experience. Even though, of course, you want a relief from the difficult symptoms, you don't want another diagnosis in a way. You want to believe that it's okay. And I feel like in some ways we gaslight ourselves that like we're just not tough enough or whatever. And in that way, I feel like a diagnosis is a relief, because it's like, no, this is not normal. This amount of pain and discomfort is not normal. And then all the other thing that I think is very relatable is that I feel like so many endometriosis patients are the ones who help other people figure out that they have endometriosis. And in this case, it was so lovely that it was a colleague and a friend, and someone who it only deepened the friendship to have this in common. But we're seeing so much of this connection between patients on social media too, that they are the ones who flag it for someone that, I think you have endo and I think you should check it out.
Right. I think about this all the time because when even I think I've had multiple experiences. I'm 26 now, but I've had so many experiences already of being gaslit, of not being believed, and just being looked kind of superficially and saying, this is a young girl who is being dramatic, or she is not really helping herself, etc. She's just it's something else. It's not what it actually is. And even when I was getting the diagnosis for my blood clots, it got to this point where it was so severe, not because it just did. There were so many points to me that were intervention points that were missed. As I mentioned, had pulmonary embolisms. My lung tissue was dying, but it led to pulmonary infarctions. And when I was calling the doctor's office and saying, I'm really struggling to breathe, like I cannot breathe. I'm a athlete, I'm a rower, and I can't run for 20 minutes without having to call my mom and pick me up. That is not my normal. Oh, honey, you have asthma. My daughter has that. Have you tried an inhaler? Um, or they told me I was having this lung pain of my tissue dying, which was like endo was bad, but that was really bad. And your rib muscles are inflamed. I had not been in a boat rowing for multiple months, and it was until my leg was like huge and purple that they were like, okay, it's time to go to the ER. And so there were so many points where they kind of looked at me and did not take me seriously. And so that really contributed to a lot of my fear of speaking out again, because there's this experience I think that so many endo patients have, and so many women, quite honestly, particularly when it comes to reproductive health, is when you are in such a vulnerable state and you ask for help and it's shut out and it's dismissed in the very space that you were supposed to be receiving that help. It warps your ability of safety and trust. And for me, this was what was happening to me, is that eventually I got my life-saving care, but I constantly think about the what if I could have gotten that treatment. And so it really, really impacted my ability to then go and ask for help. And when I finally did speak up to my OBGYN, I was saying I've had this really bad pain. She had even removed an ovarian cyst for me in surgery, but did not see any endo, which quite honestly I think was for the best, because in some ways I came to a proper endometriosis specialist as a clean slate, in a sense unharmed, with an ablation or an improper surgery. But at that point, when I had gotten the courage to speak up and ask for help, I was told that that pain wasn't true. It was just scar tissue from the previous surgery. My choices were to try acupuncture, and she literally opened up her laptop, looked at Google, try this red raspberry leaf tea. That's for people who are pregnant. I was 24, 20, like, well, no, 23 at that point. I'm like, what? Or she said that I could try this super Advil, this like prescription strength Advil. I was like, but, and I was telling her, I was like, it's really impacting my ability to move, so I have to adapt. And she's like, oh, good, you're adapting. But what she wasn't hearing is that this is all like altering my life. It's really taking away and making my life small. So I think to say that all of that really played into why I didn't seek help, why I was afraid to ask for help. I was distrustful, and we kind of had rewritten this narrative in my mind of like medical care equals bad, medical care equals distrust, and why so many endo patients have to seek alternative care, or alternative methods of finding that care, which is both like go women for, putting that together and power to them, but also puts them in another state of vulnerability that they're like, we live in a world of misinformation and disinformation, and like, how are we failing women at the same time for doing that? Is that we can create these kind of alternative pathways, but that's still not acknowledging that like the medical system is not addressing endometriosis well enough.
I'm so, so sorry for everything that you've been through. And also like, who wants to see their doctor open up Google? Like, absolutely not. There's a reason that I am paying you. The insurance company is paying you. I can Google stuff on my own. What are you doing?
If I want to spiral, I'm gonna go Google it myself.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's insane. I'm so sorry. So I'm really glad that, you eventually did get connected with proper care. What did the journey look like from there?
It's been long, and quite honestly, if I knew how long it was going to be, I maybe would have even procrastinated that longer. It took an initial consult where I was immediately believed. We went over everything. That appointment was an hour long. Shout out to Dr. Theo. He has single-handedly changed my life for the better. And when we talk about this process of like rewriting our relationship with medical care in kind of a traumatic way, in a lot of ways, he undid that for me. And this took a really, really long time to do. But just the process of being listened to, given the right amount of time. We went in for excision surgery. And then I was still having a lot of pain. So that kind of indicated that it was time to get a hysterectomy for adenomyosis, the evil twin or evil cousin of endo. And then I needed more care after that. And so this has been a 3-year process for me so far. I am not fully done. In between all of these surgeries, I've had pelvic floor PT, I've had ortho PT, and there were so many points where I wanted to give up. But building this relationship with a doctor who knows you and trusts what you say. And there was one time I remember I was very sad in the doctor's office and very frustrated. And I was like, you're doing everything. I'm trying to do everything I can. Like, what is wrong with me? Why can I get better? And he just says, you know what? I know you're ready to give up, but I am not. And we will keep going. And if I wasn't about to cry at that point, I definitely was then. And I might still do it now. Because I think about that a lot. Um, Most of the time when our care becomes complicated and long, doctors get exhausted by it because it's not the quick fix that they want. Um, but to have the provider themselves say, I'm not giving up on you, there's nothing wrong with you, has I think really shown me that it's not just my fault for having all these things. It's a disease that is really complicated, requires care, and that when you found the right place, they're going to fight it out with you, and that it's a team process, that it's not just me or them just talking at me in my treatment. It's a conversation that goes together all the time.
Yeah. Well, I am just so glad you found that care and that he said that, especially in that moment. And also that it helped you see what you just said, which is that these are incredibly complex conditions with so much misinformation and misdiagnosis that adds to the complexity of them. And you also have endo and adenomyosis. So you have two complex conditions that are really separate, but like kind of interrelated, as you said. So it's really acknowledging that there's nothing wrong with you. And if anything, I think endo and adeno patients have such resilience, such fortitude. I just wish you didn't have to have it because it puts that to the test just in how difficult it is, but it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong or flawed in the person dealing with it. So I'm just on multiple levels, just so glad that you found him, obviously. And I think one important thing to mention is I think, you mentioned hysterectomy, and I think unfortunately there are some patients who only have endometriosis that are told that a hysterectomy can be a solution for them. And unfortunately, that really is not the case often, and is sort of an outdated treatment plan. So I don't know if you want to touch on that at all.
Yeah, I think it was kind of interesting in this process to have a hysterectomy in the right way.
Mhm.
Um, and to also show that we kind of had stepped this along and that we had kind of gone through the lines of care that kind of then led us to that being the last possible decision. I think it's when you kind of explain to somebody at like how do you summarize without going to like this like laundry list of medical issues about why you had certain things when I have endo and complications is kind of how I will simplify it.
Mhm. Mhm.
But when I needed my hysterectomy and it was time, it was the worst possible time to like be making this choice because I had had excision in December of 2022. Fall 2023, I'm getting married. August of 2023, I'm starting graduate school. So I'm knowing I'm still having really severe pain that's causing me to like still not be present at my job, which I needed to. I worked in refugee resettlement. I was a case manager. I needed to be there for my clients. I supervised a team. I needed to be there. So to still be missing work was like, oh no. But to kind of see, for me, I saw the writing on the wall and I was like, okay, I know I've seen this in my friend. I've seen this. I feel it in my body. It's time. So I decided to get that hysterectomy. And we did that in June. And to me, it was so much of a celebration of continued care. I fully understand that for a lot of people, it can be really sad. I never felt sad, quite honestly. The only thing I was potentially sad about was that like I had to have another major surgery and like work my life around it and now throw in this major surgery in between wedding planning and starting graduate school and like all of that. But what I had decided to do, and I will cannot take full credit for this because it was my friend who I've talked about now. When she had her hysterectomy, she had a uterus party. And so when it was my turn to get the surgery. So he's like, okay, now we're gonna do this for you. So it kind of became the passing of the torch that nobody really wanted. And this was great timing too because I had my bridal shower that day. So my friends were already there, and I was like, guess what? You get to celebrate me twice today. We're gonna do it kind of formally prim and proper and then go have fun later. So what my friends got so into it, they were so excited. I had made a piñata and it like kind of like deformed. And everyone's like, that doesn't look like a uterus. But then it actually matched the deformity of my uterus. I was like, life imitates art in that way. I had called it
So
without even
amazing.
knowing. But we had filled it with, I hope I can swear here, but these little literal wooden words that said fuck. So we were gonna give less fucks. And then leftover
Love it.
little like men that you put on your drinks for my bachelorette party. So it was kind of like a nod to like both my femininity, giving less fucks, like all of that. And we
Love it.
filled it with the piñata. And then my friends surprised me and they made a cake of the uterus and it said bye bitch and it was so funny. And there we are at that party and it not only became kind of like a celebration of life for me, which was kind of really interesting if you think about it, that I had to kind of like rescind my ability to give life in a way, and that like losing an organ, losing life, I'm gonna put that in quotations at the same time getting mine back. And we were going through as we were like, how do we cut this cake? How does the surgery work? What is the first step? So we had my friend who had had the hysterectomy saying, okay, here's how you take out the cervix, and then this is what happens, and then
Oh
all
my
my friends are
God.
like, whoa. So it became an
That's
anatomy
so
lesson.
cool.
Educational
Yeah.
too. It's
I
Yeah,
love
it
educational.
it.
became this educational moment. And like, I'm always for putting factual information of women's health and like not speaking in euphemism and not speaking in these kind of like opaque words. We're gonna call it like it is, and we're not gonna be ashamed about it at all. There's too much uterine shame already. I will not tolerate it anymore. So it was just so fun to be surrounded by all of my friends. And they got really into it. And we went outside to do the piñata, and my neighbors let me take their wiffle ball bat, and it's just like slamming it. And I actually had to go outside the next morning and clean it up. There was like a little ovary that was like stuck in their garden, so I had to go hunt them out. Um, so I was like, oh, gotta go find the ovary.
That's
I mean,
amazing.
you told me about this party and I just loved it because on, again, so many levels, just I'm a believer in like reclaiming what other
Mhm.
people might think is a sad occasion and having fun with it and having laughter with it, having joy with it. And also just that I think when it is the appropriate care for something like adenomyosis, when you knew it was going to bring relief to those symptoms, I think it was you were empowered to make the choice, and it was a choice that was actually medically indicated. And to me, that's so different than unfortunately people that we've met in our community that had hysterectomies where it was not what was going to help them with their condition, and they were grieving the loss of it. And I know there wasn't some aspect of that, but as you said, which I don't think we should tell people how they should feel about something. You knew, as you said, I loved what you said about how you were reclaiming the quality of your life and you knew it was going to help with that. And so that's why it was cause for celebration. So I love it. And I love
Yeah.
the bye bitch on the uterus cake. It's just
That's spectacular.
so
That was
great.
amazing.
I want to see pictures of that.
Yeah,
Oh,
we have.
they will be sent.
Excellent.
But shout out to my friends who literally handmade that cake. That was amazing. And then also to be able to include my doctor in that process of like having him contribute to the music playlist, to know that he was kind of there and kind of celebrating that with me. It was just so much of this process, like not to sound weird and being like, yay, like love Theo, but like
You can love your doctor. That's
it's
great.
it's such a powerful experience to kind of walk through this together and as equals in some way. And like, I am not a minimally invasive gynecologic surgeon in any way, but like, I do not have a medical degree, but like, I felt so much of that process as an equal with him. And the respect, like the mutual respect for each other was just, I think, so important to me feeling comfortable and having continuous care, because so much of it I had felt embarrassed to need care and like what was wrong with me, etc. But to be able to like celebrate these steps and this process was just so wonderful.
I love it. I love it. So, I mean, I still think of you as a newlywed because, it hasn't been that long and you guys are so sweet. And, but of course, a hysterectomy does change the course of, your future family building if you choose to grow your family further. You're already a beautiful family, but if you choose to grow it further in the future, it obviously changes that trajectory and path. How are you kind of thinking and feeling about future family building at this point?
Yeah, and the one thing that was really, I think, I wouldn't say tough, but what the hysterectomy did have to do is force us to have conversations really early when we were not like fully thinking about like, yes, we want a family, but like we weren't really getting in the weeds of that at that moment because that was like forever in the future. I was gonna focus on my degrees first and gonna build career, etc. But my husband, love him so much, shout out Mark, is that he's always, this conversation was in some ways never difficult for us because he was like, yes, I want a family, and yes, I may be a little bit bummed that we won't be able to have like kids in that way, but this is so overwhelming on your body. Like, whatever choice we make, I just want you to be happy and healthy. That is the only goal that I want. So whether to choose different forms of family building, like he was like, this is your body, you choose what to do with it. Whatever I like, having the family is important and having like you happy and healthy is important. And um so that conversation was not difficult. It just did make us do it a little bit earlier than we wanted. What I kind of introduced my degree in my studies because I'm a student of international relations. I go to a school that is like 55, 60% international. So one thing I believe we will be doing in the future is adopting internationally, which I'm really excited about. It just feels like kind of an ode to kind of who we are at this point, and that families look different in that way. Um, yeah, I think that was kind of our choice it wasn't really difficult in some ways. And I think I'm just really lucky within our family, I will be honest. It wasn't difficult, but I think that there was a lot of discussion about using certain other tools, for example, I think there was a lot of, how do I put the word? There was a lot of like kind of desire or like, why don't you use all these other tools first to like, like do surrogacy or whatever, or to like do anything else. And I said, no, I don't really want to do that. That's not me. So I think it was very easy with my husband in some ways. There was a little bit of like a misunderstanding and other times of like, why wouldn't I want to use these tools? And it just because they're there doesn't mean I want to use them. That's doesn't reflect our family, I feel.
Yeah, and I mean, we've been hearing stories lately about patients wanting hysterectomy or needing slash wanting hysterectomies, and people again telling them, no, you don't want that. You don't know it yet, but you don't want that. And it's like, no, it's patient autonomy in every way. You don't need to put your expectations or societal or cultural norms on someone if they again, we want patients to be fully educated and supported, but ultimately these are their decisions, not prescribed ways of thinking and feeling that we put on them, not what they are actually feeling. And I think New Hampshire even just passed a law, I think the first in the nation, that patients need to be able to decide that it's crazy that we need a law about that, but that they have the right to decide that and not societal expectations of what they can and cannot do to their own body.
Right. And because I decided this at age 24, so I think there was a little bit of, are you sure? Do you want a second opinion? Do you understand how big of a deal this is? And I was like, yes, I very much do. Quite honestly, like if anybody should understand, it's me. Like, and the fact that in some ways it wasn't understood that I knew my body. I knew what pregnancy, for example, was going to be like. When I have these factor 2, factor 5 clotting disorders, I was told at 17 I was already going to be prone to miscarriages. When you are pregnant, you have flushes of estrogen, which can increase your likelihood to clot. For me, pregnancy was something that was quite honestly dangerous for me. I did not want to go through. I did not want to try and have multiple miscarriages or put myself at risk again with clots because I had very severe ones. So to consider all that, I am very informed in the decisions that I'm making, and how I seek autonomy and health for myself. And I remember when I had that call with Theo and be like, I want a hysterectomy, and I had this entire list of every section of my life where I thought this was going to make it better. And he said, "You know what? You don't need to convince me." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "You told me you don't have agency in your life and you think this will make it better. I hear you. Enough said." And I had come ready to rock, like point A, exhibit 2, whatever. And he was like, "You didn't ever need to do that." I was like, "Oh, okay."
That's really lovely that you found a provider and you were in a place where you could genuinely make that decision for yourself.
Yeah.
Did you go through the list though? We're like, I prepared this. I want to like say it all out. Just
The way he is that he'll kind of hear you out and then be like, "You didn't need to do that." And so he'll still listen to me
Cool.
and kind of like go.
so you put the prep work in. You might as well like get the
Yeah,
chance to
you
do it.
should fear any patient, but I will say, especially a woman who's like, and another thing, and another thing, and on to the next point that I'm making for my case. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm sorry that you had to kind of have some of those difficult family building conversations so early in, your relationship, so early in your life. But again, really glad that you had the opportunity to make the best decisions for your own body. So while family building might not be in your near future, you have gotten really involved with advocacy around endometriosis. And obviously, for a lot of folks, it does have fertility implications. So can you talk a little bit about that work that you've been doing?
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this. Um, this is something very new to me. And it just kind of like serendipitously happened where I saw a post on Facebook and it said there are these bills going up for a hearing in the Massachusetts legislature. Use your voice. If you want to testify in person or with written. And I saw it, and I've had conversations with my doctor about advocacy and using my voice. And it was even he that said, you know what, you are articulate. I was like, oh, I don't know about that. Um, and you've gone through it enough that you have a perspective that is unique. And so I saw this, and if we had been talking about this, I was like, okay, you know what, it is time to walk the walk, and step up. And that's how I got to meet Kate, and join in the advocacy efforts, going and testifying, and sharing my story at the State House. So I both had a written statement that I submitted, and as well got to testify in person at the Massachusetts State House in support of the three bills, I believe, that are about just comprehensively making endometriosis care better and kind of centering, um, creating a group in which we do think about endo care in all parts of that ecosystem. And so from there, I've just, I guess, gotten involved and have kind of, said this was really special for me. How can I continue to be involved? And Kate has like opened up her arms in the group for me. And so here we are.
So yeah, I think in Massachusetts, it's been an interesting experience because these bills were filed about endometriosis, largely motivated by the legislators themselves, which has been amazing, actually. But it's different than usual. I mean, and it's been in partnership, certainly, with patient advocates all along the way. But I mean, often we're going to legislators and asking them to file something. In this case, they kind of filed these bills first, and then the advocacy community got involved. And so it was kind of a good problem to have, but it was like, well, who is like the advocacy group supporting these bills? And obviously All Paths Family Building is an advocacy organization, but we are not endo specific. And so I was fortunate, All Paths and others created one. Basically, it was like, if you build it, they will come. Let's just create it. And so that was the origin of a new organization called the Endometriosis Alliance of Massachusetts, which has a great acronym, TEAM. And so we just created it, and it's been great. It brings together providers, patients, loved ones, and caregivers of people with endometriosis, and All Paths is just so proud to be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I'm doing is I had planned to run the Cambridge Half Marathon. This is the first time in a number of years where I have not had a surgery. And I had wanted to do something really special for it. And so I had decided that I would run, being an athlete forever in my life and having that kind of taken away, to use this Cambridge Half Marathon to rebuild that and kind of rebuild that relationship for me. So then I thought, with that in mind, with my recent experience and kind of connection with the Endometriosis Alliance of Massachusetts, to make this a fundraiser. And another part of what I wanted to do with this fundraiser is to show that, like, you can have endo and I can go through all of these horrible things and I can still do the hard things. I can still do those physically hard things. If I'm not running a 7-minute mile, it's also okay. I will cross that finish line, hopefully. And just to put a visibility, like, endo, as much as we talk about all the really bad things, treatment can make your life better again. And it's a privilege I don't take very lightly. This has been such a wonderful opportunity, and I will hope to continue to, like, literally and metaphorically run with it. Um, to use the privilege of getting better to kind of give back my voice and to show the strength and resilience of the community. And to just be able to continuously show up and center endo in these conversations of women's health, just general health with your friends, etc., everywhere. I'll talk about it everywhere.
I love
And
it.
that's so important.
Yes.
I mean, like you said, a lot of the education is coming from other patients, not elsewhere. So being able to use your voice to say, hey, like, look at what I've been able to accomplish is huge. Will
Yeah.
really give a lot of people hope.
I mean, we're so grateful that you're doing this as a fundraiser for All Paths and the work of TEAM. And one thing is just that TEAM isn't a nonprofit yet. And so, like, for fundraising purposes and others, All Paths has been glad to be sort of the hub and the nonprofit that people can donate to. And then the funds raised by efforts like your half marathon are supported by those donations. So the money goes to All Paths, but then it's to fund this endometriosis advocacy that's being done by team and by us. So it's been really great. And you were a natural at the State House as well. I want to say your testimony was really powerful, and you have been so thoughtful and compassionate about every aspect, including just how you are wording things and how you're sharing things, because you are mindful of the people in the trenches suffering with symptoms that are having trouble walking around their apartment, never mind going for a run. And so it just, to me, speaks to your character and your sort of membership in this endo club that people don't necessarily want to be part of, but are happy to have one, that you have been so thoughtful around how you're framing this. And I think the reaction so far has just been total like joy and delight from people that you're able to do this. They're so happy for you. And I also think if they're not in that place, well, there's some people that no matter what, they won't run anyway. But even if I think people are looking at it as an example of whatever their thing is that they want to get back to, you are showing them that they will get back to it and that they can get back to it, whatever that is.
I appreciate your kind words about the testimony. I was so nervous. And I just, again, with the half marathon, with the testifying, it makes me realize the importance of taking a pause and to show, look where you are in this moment. There were so many days where I did not think I would get better. Even 2 summers ago, getting my hysterectomy, I had a complication. I was hospitalized for it. I was really unwell. I could barely walk. Even when I got out of the hospital, and that summer, it just felt like I spent all of that summer going to and from the Mount Auburn endo office and falling with complications and wondering like what would my life now be like if I got this care that I knew was supposed to change my life, but I'm not feeling that way right now. Like, would I get there? And to both be able to run this half marathon or to even think about it and like believe and trust that I can do it, knocking on wood, but and then to be able to go and testify, what a moment for that. What a moment to just not only have that day. It felt to me like that was the day that Endo took the state house in the best possible way. And also just to be there and be in the community and where I had felt so isolated and alone for so long, just to be surrounded by people. And it was like I had never met these people, but there was just this instant connection because they had something that you had. I even met somebody for the first time in 10 years that had factor two and or no, factor five, and we had a little hug and we had a little cry.
Oh,
But just the ability to find that, I think it was a victory lap in itself among many other milestones to come. It just, what a day that was. I think about it a lot.
Me
that's
too.
amazing.
I'm at the State House a fair amount, but that was a very, very special day for me as well. It was wonderful. And, yellow is the endometriosis color. So a lot of us involved yellow in some way in our outfits. And so it was just so cool to look around that room and see all the yellow. And like when you got there, you could kind of tell who was with you, even if you didn't know, although a member of the committee was wearing yellow just by chance. So we were
An
like,
ally.
yeah, we were, and so I think she will be an ally, but she didn't even know that she had picked the right fashion for that day. But it was so cool. Like the other people in like the gallery, they call it, of watching the hearing, you would see someone across the room wearing yellow. And so you were just like, I'm pretty sure they're here for us. So it was just so, so great. So thank you so much for your advocacy and your leadership on all of these things.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It's been really lovely getting to hear your story. And like Kate said, thank you for the advocacy work that you're doing. And for the fundraiser, that's really lovely. We're definitely going to be cheering you on.
We'll need it.
You're going to be great. So I know that you're not kind of actively trying to build your family at the moment, but we do have 2 questions that we like to ask all of our guests. So we'll pose those to you now, and you can kind of add your own twist on them if you would like, given kind of your own life experience. But the first is, what's one thing that you would say to someone who is just starting to grow their family? And the second is, what's one thing you wish people would never say when someone shares that they're struggling to grow their family? And again, feel free to kind of add your own flavor to them.
Yeah, I think this question really is going to touch on a lot of the things that we've been touching on so far. And the first is, what is the ideal family? Like, what does that even mean? What is the ideal family building process? What is like, is it natural pregnancy? But is it not like if you have natural pregnancy, quotations, but have a cesarean? Like, the more you think about it, what if you get pregnant naturally, like quotations again, vaginal birth, but then are a single parent? Like, it's just the more you start thinking about like what is this ideal, or like what is the like normative, I would say normative more than ideal family building process, the more you're gonna say, you know what, I really don't know. Because it seems like the more we can kind of add to the flow chart, the more complicated it gets, and the more you realize that it, like, you know, there is no normative process. Um, so to someone who's starting that process, like, you do what you want. I did what I wanted. I feel very comfortable in my choices, because that's me. That's what it reflects in my life, and that's what's going to serve my current family better. I guess just basically what works for you is what the ideal is, and nobody gets to tell you otherwise.
I want to put that on a t-shirt.
I think when we start to unpack the normative family, again, I'm putting this in quotations, is that that's going to look really different for anybody. So when somebody might have a struggle, like for me, I didn't feel upset in my choice for the hysterectomy, and I know the path for me is in the future and what my choices will look like. But that comes without judgment, right? Because what works for me does not work for somebody else. There could be somebody who was not upset about getting a hysterectomy but wanted surrogacy. That works for them, phenomenal. So I really think that when you kind of liberate yourself from this ideal, or the ideal family or the normative family building process, you're also going to liberate yourself from judgment. And I encourage anybody who's kind of on the outside, and everybody's path is going to look differently. And I think that's one thing that All Paths really highlights, is that there are all these paths to family building. It's literally in the name. Don't judge, just support. Everybody's journey is different.
Okay, maybe that's the t-shirt.
Mic drop.
Amazing.
Yes. Yes. That's it. That's it. And it's not hard, people. Well, you rock. You rock. Thank you so much. And we're going to include, obviously, the link to your fundraiser with the show notes.
Thank
and
you.
It was really fun to get to talk more.
Yeah, absolutely.
We hope you'll join us next time for more family building stories and resources. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts to make sure you never miss an episode. And follow us on social media at All Paths FB, or visit our website, allpathsfb.org, for more information about our work. All Paths Family Building is so grateful to the members of our circle of support who are vital to our ability to provide emotional support, education, and advocacy that is open to anyone struggling to grow their families. Today, we want to give a special shout out to our gold sponsor, Mass General Brigham. Thank you for joining us for this episode. Please help spread the word so that anyone who is struggling to grow their family can join the conversation. It's an honor to walk with you on your family building journey.